in the Tibetan tradition, when we start, we take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and the Sangha. And so what does this really mean, So what is it to take refuge? First of all, to take refuge is the willingness to surrender your own personal agenda, your own personal identity. If you're willing to surrender the egoic identity of a somebody, to take refuge in the Buddha, this is taking refuge in your own mind. Taking refuge in the Buddha is taking refuge in your own nature, which is a silent, empty, open, radiant mind. It means taking refuge in yourself. When you take refuge in the Dharma, this is taking refuge in the truth. The truth is silent. This is why when you take refuge in the Buddha to the Dharma, it goes to the throat chakra. The truth is silent. It speaks in silence. So, to take refuge in the truth is the willingness to surrender your own personal identity to silence. And if you take refuge in the Sangha, Sangha is at the heart. It's love. So if you really take refuge in love, it's the willingness to give up your personal agenda around the emotional attachments that you call love, to surrender to true love, that is your own nature. And then the Sangha is the Sangha of truth seekers that are willing to stay true to silence, emptiness, and love in support of you staying true to your own Buddha nature, which is silent, empty love. So if you're a part of this lineage, of this Dharma center, you've probably taken bodhisattva vows. Bodhisattva vow is the willingness to serve the awakening of all beings. Now this seems very abstract, very esoteric and theoretical in some way. We hear, well, the bodhisattva is willing to get at the end of the line. But practically, since you who have taken bodhisattva vows, how does it practically show up moment to moment that your life is in the service of the awakening of all being? It's very simple. It's not about how long you meditate. It's not about if you sit 20 minutes or an hour or if you go on a retreat for 3 years. It's moment to moment. How is your life an expression either of the service of the enlightenment of all beings or the service of me and what I want? It's very simple. If your life is in service of me and mine, my desires, my needs, what I think should happen, my trip, my possessions, my partner, my relationships, if your life is in service of this, then it's not in service of the enlightenment of all beings. And it's very obvious, because in one you're suffering, in the other you're happy. If you're suffering in any way, it's because you're in service of something selfish. When you're in service of the personal me with its own personal desires, this is selfish and then causes suffering. If you're in service of the enlightenment of all beings, if you're in service of being a bodhisattva, this is selfless. And selfless, you find self everywhere, and it's happy and blissful. In selfishness, you don't find self anywhere. You just find this idea of me that takes up all the space, as if the whole universe revolves around me, and everyone is something related to me. Either you're for me or you're against me, you're with me or you're I want to be with you or I don't want to be with you. And that takes up all the room. And then all of your discussions are about supporting your story of what you're getting and what you need and what you're not getting and who's doing what to whom. And then the whole sexual warfare that happens, the jealousy and the competition and the sexual madness that happens so much here on Maui. It's all about the pursuit of me. But if you've taken bodhisattva vows, what you want really in your heart, what you want is the awakening of all beings. And that starts with you. Directly, here, right now. You start. You already are Buddha. This is your nature. Be yourself. See, in the spiritual community, there's lots of easy trance words about be yourself and be here now and be in the moment. And this gets misused to justify acting out the egoic story. I'm just in the moment and I've got to share my truth with you about what you've done to me. And this is a lie. And so this Dharma Center is dedicated to the awakening of all beings. That's why we're here. And all beings starts with you. It's no one else's responsibility. No one else has to get it. Your partner doesn't have to wake up. Your partner doesn't have to be the perfect spiritual friend. Your partner doesn't have to be the enlightened Buddha. You take it on. You be it. Which means taking responsibility for your own situation, where you are in this moment. Since you already are Buddha nature, you have the infinite capacity to realize yourself as that. And what is Buddha nature? Surrendering to the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. Empty, silent, radiant consciousness that is aware of itself as love. When you are yourself, you're happy. When you're chasing some idea of yourself, some idea of your needs and desires and fears, you're unhappy. That's very simple. And so the great sacrifice, the bodhisattva sacrifice, is the willingness to sacrifice your personal agenda, your personal desires, your personal program of what should happen, is what's sacrificed. And it seems like such a big deal when you're addicted to it. And when you're free of it, the relief is so enormous, the bliss so overwhelming, that people become frightened of the bliss. It seems too much. And the tendency is to run back into something known. So it's very clear, in any moment, you're always serving something. If you're serving the awakening of all beings, you're surrendered. You've surrendered into your own nature as silent, empty, conscious, radiant love. If you're serving your agenda, your personal story, your personal identity, you're suffering in some way. Suffering, and often in this particular spiritual subculture, ignoring the suffering, lying about it, and putting a happy face on top of it. And then a spiritual platitude on top of that. So you can say, oh, it doesn't matter, we're all one. It's only a story. I am God, you are God, it's all God consciousness having an incarnation experience. Or whatever your particular way of telling yourself a spiritual fantasy to avoid being here. But if you're willing to be here fully, you're willing to be yourself. And if you're willing to be yourself, you're willing to expose the lies of who you've said you are, who you think you are, who you believe yourself to be. So this is a Tibetan Buddhist Dharma center, which is the practice of Vajrayana yoga. And there are different developmental stages in the awakening of this pure consciousness to itself. It starts out where you recognize the truth of the situation, that who you think you are doesn't exist. Doesn't really exist. This is Vipassana. This is Hinayana. This is the first vehicle to realize that your identity is a myth. It's a trans-induction. That what you're calling your name is merely the brand of the animal that you're inhabiting. It's a slave name. It's like calling a cow Bessie. It's a slave name, and when you realize that, and when you wake up from that trance, and you see what you thought there was somebody there, there's no one there at all. It's completely empty. Completely silent, radiant consciousness. No one present. Consciousness aware of itself, without a personal identity. This is the first cutting of Hinayana. First cutting of the ripening of consciousness. Then Mahayana. Mahayana is the radiant love, the compassion for all beings, the willingness to see yourself everywhere, the willingness to see it as all radiant consciousness, calling itself I, the same radiant consciousness calling itself I in all form. Oh, when you see this, when you bow to this, when you surrender, this is surrendering to the heart of compassion, of love. This is Mahayana. And then Vajrayana is the willingness to embody that fully, which means the willingness to not take anything personally. If you're willing to not take anything personally, then your life itself is the embodiment of Buddha, and your life itself is the embodiment of the Vajrayana. Your life itself is the embodiment of silence. And then your life itself is the teaching. And this is your nature. This is your human possibility. You are the same consciousness. Your nature is Buddha nature. So in this Vajrayana teaching, those of you who must know, it says you have three bodies. The first body is the only real body. The only real body is the Buddha nature, the Dharmakaya. Dharmakaya means the truth body. This is your body. It means completely empty, completely still, radiant emptiness. That's what's speaking, that's what's listening. Same. Same. This is the truth. No form. And if the truth is no form, then the whole universe disappears. This is the truth. What's left when the universe disappears? Not just your particular life, my particular life, the life of this particular meat body. How long? How many rotations around the sun? 100 rotations? Not likely, but let's say, what's 100 rotations around the sun? How many have there been? How many will there be? So when you see the complete insignificance of 100 rotations, and you're willing to give up not just the personal life, but then the earth itself, the solar system, the galaxy, the universe. When you turn your back on the universe, on all of manifestation, from the most gross to the most subtle, from the beginning to the end, what's left is the truth. And this is who you are. This is the first and only body, the Dharmakaya. This radiant emptiness of the wisdom of love that is completely formless and eternal gives rise within its nature to the universe. Sparks are cast out. Sparks, soul, second body. Not really a body, because in truth, it's an appearance. In the field of the truth of emptiness arises the sparks that are cast out, individual souls. Second body is the Sambhogaya. The Tibetans call this the bliss body of utility. This is what Kala Rinpoche, my root guru, called it. The bliss vehicle of utility, the pleasure vehicle of utility. What is it? It's crystallized emptiness, crystallized consciousness that seems to appear in the field of radiant emptiness, that shines with its own reflection of emptiness. And this is what incarnates over and over, lifetime after lifetime, looking for the return back from the soul to God, from the Sambhogaya back to the Dharmakaya. And this incarnation is called the Nirmanakaya, the third body of the Buddha, the physical incarnation. And in this physical incarnation there arises a reflection of that whole process. 3 more appearing bodies, a mental, emotional, and a physical, which are the mirror reflections of the Dharmakaya, the Sambhogaya, the Nirmanakaya, now appear as a mental, emotional, and a physical body. This is the incarnation and the misidentification. Consciousness has identified itself with this manifestation of a mental, emotional, and physical body. And when you're willing to cut that identification, to see who you really are, this is the soul waking up to itself. This is immortal consciousness, aware of itself as immortal consciousness, transcendent of time and space, transcendent of incarnation. This is the initiation. This is what all empowerments point to. This is your possibility. All it takes is willingness to wake up as an enlightened soul. Transcendent of time and space is merely the willingness to die to your identity as a human form. There's an egoic death that's required. To prepare for this egoic death, the Tibetans do many, many practices, prostrations and mantras and visualizations for years and years and years in order to wear away the egoic crust of the arrogance of pride, the arrogance of, what about me? But it's possible for you to cut directly through in this moment. That's the good news that I bring to my Dharma brothers and sisters. I discovered that 10 years ago after living here on Maui and receiving a transmission in this room from Jagman Control. I don't know how many of you were here in 1989 when Jagman Control was here. But he sat here and there was a transmission. That night I started laughing so hard. I fell out of my chair and my wife thought I might die from laughing. And I was watching countless lifetimes of crystal just fall back into the sea. And in that instant I knew that Jagman Control was awake. And I knew there was a possibility for awakening. And that's when I started off, when I found my teacher. And now it's 10 years later, I come back to this Dharma Center to bring my brothers and sisters the good news that it's possible for you to wake up directly, instantly, in this moment, merely by the willingness to turn your back on everything else and stay true to silence. Silence is your nature. Silence is intelligent. Silence is love. And there's no confusion. There's no voices in your head telling you this and telling you that. Silence is completely clear, crystalline pure, immaculate, unstained. And this is your nature, and it's here right now.
What was arising in my consciousness has to do with once there's a sense of the self as this empty, radiant being,
Yes.
and the motivation has arisen to work for the welfare of all beings,
Yes.
how does one decide what to do when you get up in the morning?
Yes.
Among the many competing possible avenues.
See, if you give your surrender completely into your own heart, then love is in charge. Then it's not about what your activity is. It's not about should I get up or should I stay in bed or what will I do today? Should I go surfing or lie on the beach? It's none of that. It's deeper than that. When you've surrendered your own personal agenda, then you are used. And your behaviors, whatever your job might be, that becomes the embodiment of Buddha nature. So that if you're working in a checkout line, or you're fishing, or you're tending children, or you're washing dishes, it's not about, oh, I should do this now, and I shouldn't do that now, and this will be better for service of all beings. Whatever arises is met, is welcomed. And then the personal, well, I want this. Well, what about, I want it to be different. And when that arises, that's the test. The test of are you staying true to your true nature, which is fulfilled, which is happy and at peace? Or are you staying true to a hungry ghost that demands something different and more? And it's quite clear by the fruits. If you pretend like you don't notice it in the moment, you certainly notice the fruits.
I guess what was coming up for me was the competing allegiance to different avenues of service. For example, my work in the world as a counselor, and my own partner and kids want me at home as well. So finding that balance is a challenge.
See, finding the balance is a challenge for the me that thinks of itself as a counselor and a father and a lover and someone who does good in the world. That is the obscuration to your true nature. So then, as many holy and good works as you do, as many wonderful behaviors that you perform as a father, as a counselor, as a whatever it is, it's never going to be enough. It's never going to be completely fulfilling, because there's always a fly in the ointment. There's always someone there doing it. And the one there doing it is never satisfied. The one there doing it wants recognition, wants to be seen for the good works that it's doing, feels hurt that it's not seen, feels misunderstood, and why other people are laying trips on me, and if only everybody could see what I see, and if only they would do what I want them to do. And this is the madness of ego. This is what surrenders. The me that believes itself to be a man, a father, a partner, a lover, a therapist, that's the one who surrenders and gives up control of the personal agenda. Then there are no choices about should I do this or should I do that. Because then the one who wants to do it is out of the way, and the clarity of empty wisdom shines unimpeded. See, this is why when Bodhidharma comes to the Emperor of China, and the Emperor of China says, I have built monasteries all over the country. I've built great temples to the Buddha everywhere. How much merit have I accumulated? None. Whoa, none. Because you can't accumulate merit by doing good deeds. All you can do is stay true to radiant emptiness. And then, this in itself is the fruit. This in itself generates. Because there's no one doing it, there's nothing being done, and no one receiving it. That's true service.
I'm just seeking to apply it to the telephone call with someone who would like an appointment this day. And I know my kid is at home and would like me to come home. My wife would like me to do more of my share of the dishes.
And the one who is making these strategies is the one that has to give up control. See, this is the imaginary me, imagining a future, and how you're going to strategize control to be a good guy, to be a loving bodhisattva, to give time to your wife and time to the dishes and time to your client and time to everything that's needed. But it's all false, based on someone wanting to do something. Then even if you spend perfect time with your wife, with the phone call, with the dishes, it's not right. Because then what's left is the arrogance or the pride of someone who thinks they're doing it so great. And then the crash of the shame of that, and then the guilt, and then the blame, and then the victim, and then the whole madness. This is the madness of mind. And the healing is silence. Silence is giving up your imaginary future right now. See, most people came to this talk already with an agenda of what's going to happen after the talk and what they're going to do next and who else is coming to the island and what else they're going to be doing and where else they're going. And that's all ego strung out into an imaginary future to keep yourself alive. What I'm speaking about is sudden death. Never leave this room. Let it finish here.
Thanks for the invitation.
Yes. The thanks is actually accepting. See, because all words are cheap. What I'm interested in is the acceptance, because when you accept it, then you're taking full step into taking a stand as a bodhisattva, as the willingness to die to your personal agenda. And this is love. And this is so lovable. It's so sweet. It's so true. It's so good. This is what I love. This is the thanks. Because then you become the embodiment of silence. And then whoever touches you will come in contact. Some will notice it, some won't. Some will care, some won't care. Some will be repelled, some will be attracted. But none of that's your business. Because if you give up taking your life personally, if you give up being a man, you're a bodhisattva. Yes, please.
So is this something that happens in one occasion, or is it something that, this death to yourself, is it something that...
It requires your willingness. If you're 100% willing in this instant, it's finished. If you're willing for a moment, you get a moment of realization. If you're willing forever, you get forever realization. So, it's momentary until it's final. See, when I first read Padmasambhava in 1971, I was searching. And Padmasambhava said, heaven and hell, both creations of mind. There's only one radiant consciousness. And I knew that was true. But I had no idea how do you get there from where I was. And so I searched. And in the searching, there's a playing out of all the egoic desires to see what you're staying true to. You say this is what you want, well, what about when this shows up? And to the degree that you stay true, then you have the deeper integrity to stay true to yourself. It deepens your capacity to say, enough, I'm willing fully. So you can't say, I'm willing fully, if you've already sold yourself in a million other places that you feel committed to. Yes, but what about my, but yes, but what about my, yeah, but what about my, and so everybody has all these what about my's. So they can't really, fully say yes. They think, they believe. Not true. All the what about my's, just self-induced trance. Just bad dreams. But if you believe them to be real, you struggle with them. You fight with them. You try to find ways of fixing them. You search for the magical cures to make them better. But then, finally, when you're ripe, and you're ready, and you hear the truth, and you're willing, instantly you realize there's nothing there. There never was. It's always been the same. You are always the same. Untouched, unblemished, radiant and true, completely empty. Always have been empty, always will be empty. But if you still believe there's some juice in the dream, that there's something you're going to get from it, some payoff, if you still believe there's the one waiting somewhere, or the great house, or the great sex, or the whatever it is, then you say, oh, it's very hard to wake up. It takes a long time. If you have the wisdom to see that this dream, no matter what payoffs you get, it's never enough. It's never perfect, it's never good enough. It doesn't last even if it is perfect. If you have the wisdom to see that, this is called enlightened intelligence. Then you say, stop. I don't want to go there anymore. I already know that even if it looks like a brand new chocolate, it's the same old rat poison. But most people continue to search for the better package of chocolate, believing that they'll find nectar there. If you've gotten sick enough, either you have to just get sick once really bad and say never again, or you get sick so many times you finally say never again, but eventually you say never again. Who knows when? It's like any addiction. I tried heroin once because I wanted to try everything once, and I knew I'll try it once and then never again. So that was the end. Other people try it and they never come to never again. Any addiction, sex, relationship, money, power, anything you're addicted to, eventually you have to say, enough. I want freedom. I want truth. I want to be enlightened in this very lifetime. I didn't know it was possible when I started. I didn't have a teacher. I just had books. But now it's possible. It's here. The same consciousness is here. It's possible for you in this moment, because you and I, the same. No difference. The meat might be different. The animal might appear different. But that's not what I'm speaking to. That's not what understands this. That's not what asks the question. That's not what hears the answer. Yes, that's right. That's right. You know the difference. Yes. So you can stay true to your own heart. That's all that I'm speaking of. Staying true to your own heart. And you know you're staying true because it's silent, profoundly deep, beyond the mind's comprehension, infinitely rich, sweeter beyond sweet, fulfilled. If you're feeling unfulfilled, you're looking somewhere else, for something else, in the future. That's the nature of suffering. It's the Buddha's noble truth. Suffering is desire. Desire is believing there's fulfillment somewhere else, someplace else, not here in this moment. Who you are is here in this moment, completely fulfilled, self-effulgent. Yeah. So there's an ocean of nectar in this room. And some are drinking so deeply, some are being nourished by this nectar of silence. Others are in their head questioning, well, that's what he's saying makes sense, how does that compare? What does that mean compared to what else I've heard and read? And well, who's he to say this anyway? And, oh, I agree with that. No, I don't agree with that. No, I don't think that's right. And in that, missing the ocean of nectar that's here. Missing it because there's a more involvement with the personal trance in the story, more of an interest in that than there is in falling into the emptiness of yourself. But that's okay, that's useful if you're willing to see it and expose the lie of it. Then it's useful. Then you see what you are praying to. What mantra are you running right now? Each moment you're running some mantra. That's your God. That's what you're praying to. That's your practice. And most people's mantra is about me. What I should be doing now, what I want, what I don't want, what's pressure about time, and what about this, and what about my work, what about my relationship. And this is the mantra. It's the mantra of me. It's the screaming mimes. So at any moment you can stop your mantra. And if you stop, you discover silence. Empty, deep, clear silence. Always here. The source of everything. Here in this moment. If you're willing to stop. So what happens in meetings like this is that quite naturally your story stops. And there are a lot of people in here now who have sunk into bliss, tasted silence. But then as soon as this meeting is over, take that as a signal to pick up the same old, same old. Oh, that was really good. Wow, I got really high. That was, whoa, let's go talk about what he said and share the energy. Or, whoa, it's just so deep, and now I can look at you and know you're the one, and I can see you've got God in you, and we can be God and Goddess together. And in that way, you take the Shakti, your natural Shakti that's generated, and misuse it. And take the nectar of peace and make it a commodity.
I have a question.
Yes.
Thank you. Once we make this choice and surrender into the silence,
Yes.
what will our lives be like in terms of our interactions with friends and family and job and relationship, people who have expectation?
Unknown.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes. If it were known, it would just be another trip. Some of the clues that will show up is it will definitely be a test. The test will be all of the past conditioning calling you back. The herd calling you back to the herd. You know? Your best friends demanding that you go back. Be just like they are. Tell the stories like you used to tell them. Agree with them. There'll be enormous pressure to rejoin the herd. And it has nothing to do with your behaviors. Nothing whatsoever to do with your day-to-day activities. They show up as they do. It's much deeper, more profound. And when these tests come, you either sell out for the herd, in which case you say, I've lost it. Or you conceptualize that you still have it. And you find yourself spinning. You find yourself washed further downstream. And you call it going with the flow. If you find in this midst of this test you don't sell out, then there's enormous fire. All the impulse to sell out arises. All the fears, all the insecurities, all the doubts, say, oh, but maybe they're right. Maybe I do need this. Maybe I should. And if you don't move, it burns. It's a holy fire. It's the burning up of the false identity. And then, in this fire, it burns out the bottom of what you thought was the ground of being. And you find, whoa, I thought that was emptiness. I thought that was silence. And it was relative to the noise that was there. But then the deeper, unknown depths reveal themselves in ways beyond description. Yes, thank you so much. Yes, I see your clarity and willingness. It's so beautiful. Yes, yes, time for you. This is it. Then everything that came to this moment, perfect. No victim, no blame. Parents are perfect, lovers are perfect, jobs are perfect. It's all because it led to this. Ah, blessed. Yes, blessed life.
May I speak?
Yes. Where?
Well, I experienced during the last 12 months a severe heart attack. My house burned down. My financial situation, which I thought was very secure, became absolutely insecure.
Yes.
My friends in Europe, whom I thought to be my big friends,
Yeah.
they left me.
Yes.
I lost my passport, or it was stolen.
Yes.
My credit card was stolen.
Yes.
I was 1 week in a severe alcohol thing. And sometimes it really grabbed me. And I wanted to give up. But the more I went into it, the better I came out. And now I really feel good. And yeah, it's a very new feeling, which I have now.
What is that?
Yeah. Well, it's a very deep peace.
Yes.
It's a very deep peace, and what I experienced is whatever happened, and most of these things, well, nearly killed me sometimes.
Yes.
When I looked at them from this standpoint of peace,
Yes.
it passed away. It just disappeared. It happened, and it didn't really touch me.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
This is the gift of the grace of love.
Mm-hmm.
See, people think that grace of love means some kind of little happy smiley face.
Yeah.
The grace of love is willing to grab you by the throat,
Yeah, that's it.
burn down your life,
Yeah.
whatever it takes. See, love starts by speaking to you in silence from your own heart.
Mm-hmm.
And if you ignore it, it whispers. And if you ignored it, it gets louder and louder and louder till finally it's burning your house down and grabbing you by the throat, saying, pay attention.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's it.
Thank you.
And so this experience of peace is a byproduct of the realization that you had to go through to see that it doesn't touch anything essential.
It switches sometimes, especially in moments when I fall asleep. In this moment between being awake and falling asleep, then it's sometimes the old fear comes back.
Good.
And the willingness to give up and to say, oh, I want to go back to Europe and back to my friends and get my friends back and,
Yes.
and to go into this old
That's right.
security.
This is the test.
Yeah.
The test. Fear arises.
Yeah,
And then all the things that you should do arise.
exactly.
And if you're willing then to invite the fear, to invite death, to invite it all. You see, nothing's touched.
That's it.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. That's so beautiful. That's it. So this is the beginning of the possibility of ever deeper realization of the truth of yourself, of what is untouched. And so then you can welcome this fear, because the fear shows where there's still latent subconscious identification with the someone who wants to put it back together. And then that's the opportunity to die another death, to discover something sweeter and deeper, still unknown. Yes, very beautiful. Love wants to reach out and manhandle us. Break all our teacup talk of God. If you had the courage and could give the beloved his choice, some nights he would just drag you around the room by your hair, ripping from your grip all of these toys that bring you no joy. Love sometimes gets tired of speaking sweetly and wants to rip to shreds all of your erroneous notions of truth that make you fight with yourself, dear one, and with others, causing the world to weep on one too many fine days. God wants to manhandle us, lock us in a tiny room with himself, and practice his drop kick. The beloved sometimes wants to do us a great favor, hold us upside down, and shake all the nonsense out. But when we hear that he's in such a playful mood, most everyone that I know hightails it out of town. Yes. So the whole ego structure is set up to want maximum pleasure, minimum pain, maximum comfort, minimum discomfort. No fears, lots of pleasures, and everything would be smooth sailing. And that's smooth sailing downstream. And so when the rocky road, the non-smooth sailing, when the shipwreck and house burning and world crashing happens, this is the great opportunity of love calling. This is grace knocking on your door, piercing the egoic shell, saying it's time to come home. It's time to give up all your childish pursuits. It's time to give up your false searching for something somewhere else. It's time to return. If you listen to this call, then you stay true in the midst of the river, when the whole world washes downstream and calls you to join them, grabs for your hair, you find yourself immovable. Because you're already so fulfilled in love that there's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. And that stand that you take becomes a beacon, becomes a fire, becomes a signpost for others that they also can take a stand. This is the Bodhisattva service. And whoever is willing and ready sees the fire and catches fire and takes a stand. Whoever is not willing calls you deluded and passes on by. Okay. So, yes, so good to see you. Thank you all so much. Thank you, thank you. I take refuge in the Buddha and the Dharma and the Sangha. take refuge in the pure, radiant emptiness that you are, in the immovable silence that you are, in the conscious, intelligent, pure love that you are. Thank you so much.
Thank you.